it has been sideways recently, but year to date it's up 17%. Joining us to take a look at the story behind the market's performance this year is Rele Adesina, who is Head of Research, Corporate and Investment Banking at Stanbic IBTC. She joins me now. Thanks a lot, Rele, for coming on to the show. I think generally people are disappointed, even though 18% in the global context is not that bad. Yes, Kenya has done much better than we have, but all in all, not too bad. More so because this is the first positive year since 2007. But like I mentioned, it seems many people are disappointed, and it's really because it's the story behind the banks, isn't it?
Well, I think perspective is key. You know, the market has been through a lot this year, and you know, overall, I think that the outcomes have been positive. You know, the banks, of course, are still the significant sector in the market. And you know, many things within that sector took longer than we would have hoped to sort of materialise, and you know, I think there's no getting away from that. But also, you know, in the first half of the year too, there was a general level of anxiety. Frontier markets weren't flavour of the month. You know, people were much more concerned about issues closer to home, and I don't think we can take that away from you know, the compound effect of that on our market.
And let's look at sectoral performances now. We've obviously, the non-banks have outperformed the market, and of course, obviously outperformed the banks. They've been somewhat defensive in character this year. But do you think that is really the reason for the performance, or is it more driven by the numbers, by the financial performance of these companies?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, by and large, the names in the non-financial segments have performed well. Obviously, Dangote and the listing was a big event in the cement sector, but you know, the fundamentals also have improved. I think that the fuel outlook for a number of the operators in the sector, with the exception of some of the smaller ones, is better than it was. They have more flexibility and are better able to manage that input cost, which is key for the sector, and also the import situation is also, you know, more favourable for the domestic producers. So I think the fundamentals and the direction of those fundamentals are positive. And in the case of consumer, I think again, I think there's a general sort of increased sensitization that we are seeing with respect to the Nigerian consumer story. I think that with the prolonged uncertainty with the banks, I think that a lot, and also some diversification interest. You know, there are certainly a greater number of internationals that I think are looking at the non-financial sectors also.
Let's look at the outlook now for 2011. What would you say are the key catalysts for the market's performance, bearing in mind where we're coming from and where we are right now?
Well, you know, there's no getting away from those banks. I think that the banks still remain key. I think certainly Q1 will be an AMCON quarter. I think that there's still a fair amount of uncertainty, both from guys that are in the fixed income space and in the equities market, as to exactly how everything is going to play out. And I think that Q1 will be spent, you know, trying to sort of figure that out and digest that. And, you know, thereafter we're sort of pretty much into election mode. So I think that
so do you think, for instance, that the Q1 numbers, which we'll see sometime in April, March for some of the banks, sorry, April,
the
May.
full-year numbers.
No, the Q1 numbers, and of course the full-year numbers.
Yeah.
What bearing do you think that's going to have on the sectoral performance?
Well, I actually think that the full-year numbers are going to be the more significant thing, because this is the first year that we are going to have all the banks having reported 12 months come, you know, the next round of reporting. So there's nowhere to hide, really. There's no kind of story to tell. People will be able to benchmark banks more clearly against one another. But I think, you know, we have AMCON, we have the issue of licensing, and you know, the routes that various banks are going to take, that is, as well as the full-year numbers, are going to be the key, you know, in the first half.
And what about risk? Is it also an AMCON story? Because we obviously have been talking about AMCON for well over a year now, and yes, we have the legislation in place now, but we still haven't seen the activity yet. We're thinking it will probably happen this year. I think I'm getting the sense it's not likely to happen this year. So do you think that's a risk, the delay, the constant delay in some of these
I think we should
policies?
look at AMCON as, you know, whilst they appear to be gliding on the water with very little movement, there's a furious amount of activity going on behind the scenes. I think that there is no, it's not lost on anyone the importance of gaining momentum, continuing momentum, and I think that there is a determination to draw a line under some of these things before the year end. The focus is not so much on the market and the market impact, but more actually the administrative line for the banks to be able to say, okay, it's the 31st of December, we have purchased these loans, even if some kind of interim arrangement is used to achieve that end. I think that I would say I'm kind of still pretty focused on getting that done. We may all be holidaying at the time, but maybe Christmas is cancelled for them.
What about not elections now, but the economy? Well, the central bank is saying we'll probably have 7.8% GDP growth for this year. That was phenomenal in the global context.
Yes.
But looking to next year, people continue to talk about the exchange rates, the FX reserves, and given the volatility we saw at the end of 2008, do you think there's a risk going into next year?
Well, you know, of course, the exchange rate is heavily determined by the oil price and the production volumes, and our house view is very much that those will remain robust for the foreseeable. So we don't have an anxiety, about that. And I think there's also a greater sense of restraint in the whole tone that is coming from the central bank. So for the moment, we are not so concerned about the outlook, but it's something obviously that we will continue to
And very
monitor.
quickly, as we round up now, where were you overweight? In the context of all you said, are you looking at banks? Are you looking at building materials, which are the top performing sector this year? Where are you putting your money? Where are you putting most of your money in 2011?
Well, I hope this is not interpreted as me being a banks analyst, but I would say the banks, because in terms of valuations...
That's a valuation play.
Yeah, definitely.